My mom and daddy worked. They were great people. It was a small community that believed in each other. My grandparents lived across the street, and we lived in rental houses. And the thing I remember is playing outside all the time. The two gravel roads was the touchdown line. We had a ditch in the middle. Come to find out later, it was a sewer ditch. All right, it was the 50-yard line, and then we had some bushes on the side, and that was the out of bounds line. And we played, and we played, and we played. And look, I played 6, 7 years old. My cousin was 12 years old. You get knocked out, you get back up and go. I love baseball. I love track. I love basketball, bitty basketball, but my uniform didn't fit, man. We had to go to New Orleans to get me a different jersey. And we'd pull, my mom and daddy would pull bitty basketball. But I just loved the competition, man. But I always felt that I'd be a football player and a football coach. My dad was kind of my mentor and my coach. You go down to Bayou, there's people that are rich and there's people that ain't. We were ain't. But I grew up rich in that home because they gave me heart, they gave me courage, the ability to compete. They kicked my ass when I needed it. I mean, I was given all the tools to be successful. Well, number one was Ronnie Estee. I mean, he was the name in the house, you know. Now, Ronnie was everybody's cousin back then. I still don't know if he's our cousin, but Brunish now played for the Redskins. And then we'd hear stories about Joe LaBruzzo, and we'd hear stories about all those guys that played at LSU. Those are the guys that were household names in my house. We go to Cajun Festival, and my dad had a couple of pops. He thought he was the governor, right? So we go into the cafeteria where the VIPs can go, but my dad got us in. And Ronnie was there, and Coach McClendon was there. And, hey, Crockett, how you doing? Hey, baby, how you doing? And hey, here's little baby. And Coach McClendon put his hand out. He goes, hello, son. My name is Charles McClendon. I'm the head coach of the LSU Fighting Tigers. I thought I was shaking hands with God. How you doing, coach? And from then on, I told my daddy, I want to be the head coach of the LSU Tigers. That was the motivation right there. Man, all of a sudden, like LaRose and Cutoff got together. And those were our enemies, but they became our best friends. Saint Lafourche was the goal. But it was like, in that day, we had to win, man. Losing was not a choice. You didn't want to go home losing. And, man, winning was about everything. Coach Perry was the deal, man. Ralph Perry came pick me, Darryl Reynolds up, and made us go practice spring ball in 9th grade for the varsity. After my first day, I told my daddy, I ain't going to. He said, your ass, you going. And, you know, he made me a player. I mean, he'd kick you in the butt now. We need it. Now, we're from Bayou boys. We were a little wild now. We were participating some stuff off the field and having fun. And, you know, and I think for a little bit, we kind of lost our focus a little bit. And we lost 3 games. We lost to Skippy Hazel. We lost to Hornville. And I think we went to some of you all the team. Maybe West Jefferson beat us. But, boy, I'm telling you, when them playoffs came, we had a team that we knew we could win. And we decided to click in. We clicked in, man, and we took 5. Bobby was a quarterback. We had a quarterback that could throw the football. But you had some guys like David Dillon, who was an extraordinary high school player. He played both ways. He'd get 10, 15 tackles, run the football. Andy Martin was tough as hell. Edgar Bouzigard, Robbie Crosby. I mean, we were a tight-knit group. We got it to the quarterfinals. And we lost to St. Aug. And who won the state championship? St. Aug. When we go to Thibodeau, you had some coaches that were from out of state. They were coaching Nichols. Well, these guys were from California. And the Brady boys were spinning in the shot put ring. And we're like, well, who's going to tell them? And me and Carl become good friends. And we're still good friends today. I said, I'll go tell them. Hey guys, the discus ring's over there. And they said, well, and they were like 220, we were like 250, 280. They said, oh no, we throw the discus. We throw the shot put just like the discus. 61 feet. We had never seen nothing like that in our lives. Coach Perry stood out. I mean, he's him, Jimmy Johnson, and Pete Carroll were the 3 best coaches I coached. After my sophomore year, I started getting letters. Coaches would come to the school. I was offered by LSU I was going down the shootout. That was it. But Alabama was going to come to the house. Bear was going to come to my house. My daddy said, no, we don't need him over here. I wasn't fast enough to play defense like the guys that they had. They brought in some guys that were really fast. I was a good defensive player in the box, but as far as running out, I'd have been a better offensive lineman. And they moved me to center, and it was a good move. But the bottom line is I got homesick. I didn't know what it was like to be away. 2 hours away from home? Wow. Now, the best thing that ever happened, though, I drove home. So the next day I'm going to cool out, right? My dad woke me up. He goes, let's go to work. And I'm digging ditches on the side of the Bayou. And they passed and they're stopping. You couldn't take it, you son of a gun. And my dad said, dig. I said, God almighty. I went from the penthouse to the house right away. But that motivated me. Then Bobby ended up calling me and said, hey, man, we got a scholarship at Northwest for you. You want to come? Hell yeah. If you look back at it, which I don't, I think everything happened for, I love Northwestern. It was good for me. Man, we got there, Sidney Thornton was in the NFL, Petey Pirro, guys we looked up to. And then you get there, man, you try to tackle Joe Delaney in practice. Bobby Abear grew. Victor Otis, then Mark Dupa. Dupa was one of my buddies. And, we just had Gary Regis. Think about it. We had some great players there. My senior year, I really turned it on. I thought I had a great year and no regrets. Ended up being team captain, got the Joe Delaney Leadership Award. So turn around some behaviors that were not conducive to what I needed to be doing. I went try out for the USFL, the Memphis Showboats. So I borrowed my buddy's car. I went all the way out there. They didn't even have my name on the list. Somebody was supposed to get me a trial. This kind of fake agent, whatever. He said, well, come on, coach, we'll let you in. Well, anyway, so I was going home, and I called my dad and said, it's over. He said, well, what you going to do? I said, I'm a coach. I said, where at? Northwest. So I go to see Coach Goodman when I got back. Well, baby, what you going? I said, I'm going to coach. He goes, where at? Here. He goes, I ain't got a job. I said, Coach, what time does the staff meet tomorrow? 8 o'clock. I said, I'm going to be here. He said, well, I can't pay you no money. I said, that's okay. He said, okay, I'm going to let you volunteer. But these are 2 things you got to do. You can't eat in the cafeteria. You can't leave in the dorm. Okay. I borrowed my buddy's truck. I'm going to get an old bed on the dorm. I moved in the visitors' dressing room in the stadium. Nobody knew. Man, I had a bunch of lockers, a bunch of showers. Man, I was living high on all. And the next day, I went to work, and I never looked back. There's 2 things I was going to do. Play football and coach. My summer job, I'd go work, make some money working the shrimp shed. I'd go only 2 or 3 weeks, but make some fast money. I was in the bottom of the boat, so, baby, you got a call. He said, it's from Arkansas. I said, what? I went over there, the guy goes, hey, you want an assistant strength job at Arkansas? I said, hold on. I took my shovel, boom, threw it in the bio. I said, where's Arkansas? I'll be there as soon as I can, man. I spent 1 year in the weight room, 1 year on the football field, and then I got to Miami. When I walked on that field with Coach Jimmy Johnson, I remember that. Dave Wanstead, Butch Davis, Dave Campo, Gary Stevens. Me and Tommy Tumbleville were the graduate assistants. I mean, think about that. But, man, when I walked on that field and I saw Coach Johnson and his staff coach, and I saw that teamwork, that was it. Nobody had to tell me how to coach again. That's why I learned how to coach. Back when we grew up, remember we had 3 stations, right? 4, 6, and 8. Right? Remember we had to go change the antenna outside, right? All right, we got it. Well, UFC was on TV. And I'd go with my Joe and watch O.J. run. I'd watch Marcus Allen. I'd watch John Robinson. And them in LSU, California, the whole deal. And man, that's just a school I was intrigued with and I always wanted to go to. When I was with Pete, your defensive line coach, you're rough around the edges, man. You coaching Warren Sapp, you coaching those guys, you got to walk in there and they got to know you the man. But the quarterback and the kicker, you can't treat them like that. But he tried to give me some nuggets, being a head coach that, these are some things that you can't treat them like that. I want to be a head coach. Hell, we won 2 national championships. I thought I was ready. There's no way you can prepare for that. There's no book. And, Ole Miss at the time didn't have the talent that we had in the other schools. And my demeanor, your demeanor as a defensive line coach is get after it every day. But I didn't have the governor. I couldn't calm it down. Like, we were practicing twice a day. And coaches were in ice tubs at night, you know what I'm saying? And I just couldn't let go of that. We got to work harder. And I learned a lot of lessons at Ole Miss of things that I needed to change to become a successful head coach. Ole Miss made me better. Every time that I had adversity in my life, and Jimmy Johnson told me, they said, Ed, every time you've had adversity, you come back better. I thought about what my dad said, put it in your pipe and smoke it. So when people would say something negative, the way I talk, or you're not made to be a head coach, all that, I just take it in as internal motivation and use it as freaking energy, man. You know what I'm saying? So when somebody says some to me, I just do that to them. And inside I'm saying, all right, well, and I use it for internal motivation. I spent 6 hours with Sandra Bullock. She was great. But what the crazy thing was? When they were shooting the scene from the Thanksgiving scene where she's holding the wine, I walk in there and all of a sudden they'll cut. And the producers were from USC. And Coach, fight on. They're all graduates of USC. Hey, you remember this time they stopped the freaking movie. I'm like, whoa, okay. It was a great experience. I worked 1 year at the Saints. And Sean Payton, one of the best coaches. But I was always like a father to these kids. I recruited them. I missed the recruiting. I missed the seasons. Back then in 2013, they offered me a 5-year contract at $2 million a piece. That's a $10 million contract. And my son said, Dad, you got to go. I said, I'm not going for money, son. I'm not doing it. And I decided to stay home. The best thing I ever did. I had not watched my children play at all. I got to go to every practice. I got to go to every game. And it was the best decision that I ever made. I was always asked to come to LSU because of my recruiting and my defensive line. But I just didn't feel it was right yet. And then, we got a house in Mandeville. My kids had stayed there for 4 years. And I wanted to be at LSU. So, yeah. And I loved working for Coach Miles. He treated me with utmost respect. He was a great man to work for. Hey, I was the D-line coach at LSU, and if it had lasted, if it'd still be like that, I'd have been fine. I was happy coaching at LSU. Well, it was mixed emotions. So you don't know how to feel. Now walking down the hall, I said, come here, coach. Let's go. And I met with Joe Oliva. And I had to make some changes on the staff. I told Steve Ensminger about a week ahead ago. I said, if something happens, be ready. He kind of looked at me. He goes, okay. Named him offensive coordinator. Away we went.
7:30 in the morning. And around 7:30, right before 8. I guess it was right after the end. And he said, Mom, you're talking to the head coach of LSU. And as they all bed, if Daddy be home. That was the emotion at the moment. He would have been so, so proud of him. But was I proud? You better believe it. The energy that he has, the warning, he knows what it is to be a winner. He's been there. He has the rings to prove it. He knows that feeling, and he wants the kids to know that feeling. That's a great feeling.
Ensminger is an unsung hero. We won over 80% of our games with Steve as our coordinator. I said, Steve, we got to go to spread. He goes, I agree. I said, you going to be open to learning? He goes, hell yeah. And Joe Brady had come in the summer and talked to us about some RPOs. And I said, you know what? That's the guy. When we got Joe, I heard he was going to be a great quarterback. But, I didn't know he didn't play in 3 years and all that stuff. But what I told Joe, you got to come here and earn your position. And he said, Coach, I'm going to do it. We had the conversation. I said, hey, man, I got 2 receivers named Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I said, yeah, they're pretty good. He was the general. He was the guy. We knew we were going to win going to the stadium. You could take our team anywhere, make sure Joe's on the bus. We knew we were going to win. I had never seen him that emotional. I didn't have a clue that was going to go out. And I want to tear up, and that camera's right there, and you don't want to start crying like a little baby. But it was real. It was always a goal. And and we all know this, a man's going to feel his best when he's given everything he had and he reaches his goal. And the day after we leave, now that morning, I don't go out and I don't participate in none of that. And I'm sure Bourbon Street was wild and all. But we're coming home, the interstate, the other side of the interstate, you can imagine that's when I became most excited, because that's our people. When I got married, Tyler was 5 years old, and he was 21. He said, "Dad, I need to talk to you." He said, "I want to take your name. You always been my dad." That was huge. And then my twins, they're my best friends. They grew up in Mandeville, which was great. They've been around, but they never just really understood what the Bayou meant. You know what they told me? That when y'all see each other, you and Bobby and everybody, the love that y'all have for each other. And that's irreplaceable. One of the reasons that I'm not coaching again, because I get to be a father. Now, LSU is taking care of me. Financially, I'm in good shape. And I finally get to go just be a dad. And I enjoy just being a dad. Miami wanted me to go to coach again. I didn't want to do that. A couple people called. I just enjoy the time I have with my kids. The game has changed. But I will say this. What I told my boys. Although I have strong feelings against, especially with the transfer portal, I think the kids ought to get paid. Like all of us, I think it needs to be regulated. If you're a young coach, you have to learn how to do it, how to navigate through it in order to be successful. You can't fight it, because if you fight it, you're gone. It's there to stay. The Bayou is in my heart. Louisiana has always been in my heart. So this is a big deal. It all happened for a reason. When you sit back and you retire, you got time. I don't think I ever did this in my life. What I'm doing, sitting on a rock and just chilling out, talking. And look how everything happened for a reason. Everything. I wouldn't regret a thing. It all worked out the way it should.